We have now come to the end of learning phase 2 for cost and management accounting. And in this session, I'm going to have a look at job costing and really more specific, how do we absorb the overheads that we think we're going to have into a job when we, for instance, quote for a job. Okay, so let's have a look at this. Let me share my screen with you. And in this case, I'm going to put the question and the solution next to each other. It's just easier to do it in this case. So here's the cost and management accounting sample assignment 2, question for job costing. It says a summary of the budget data for Leith Clothing for the year 2020 is given below. So this is what they budget. They have budget overhead cost to the tune of 684,500. They have budgeted direct material costs to the tune of 343,469, direct labor costs just over $500,000, and then they have budgeted for 97,500 direct labor hours and 37,690 hours. I do not know what garments they are making. We are not told. And this is what is required. It says, use each of the following bases to determine the manufacturing overhead application rate and round it to 2 decimal points. That's something weird going on here, and I'm a little obsessed, so I want to fix it quickly. Okay. So here they give us the overhead applications that they want us to use. Okay. So the first thing they give us is they say we must use direct material cost as the basis, then direct labor cost, then direct labor hours, and then machine hours in each case. Now, look what is going to happen here. If we use the word base, base always mean under the line. So here are the application bases, and we can simply put them in as we are given them. Direct material cost, direct labor cost, direct labor hours, and machine hours. Don't have to wonder where we find them. It is given. Okay. Now our overhead cost, we have it. There it is given. There's our total overhead cost. It is the budgeted overhead cost is 684,500. So this will be the same in each column. Then we are going to divide it by the base number that we were also given. So in the case of material cost, the number we were given is 343,469. Okay. And so for the others. So we can simply add them in there as they were given. Just remember that 2 of them are expressed in rand and 2 of them are expressed in hours. Okay. And then to get the overhead rate, we simply take the overhead cost and we divide it by the base number. And then we get our overhead rates. I'm going to show you something now with regard to this once we've gotten the answers here. Now, in the case of direct material cost and direct labor cost, if we use either of those as our base, we have our overhead cost that is expressed in rand, and our material cost and labor cost is also expressed in rand. And if we have 2 units that, or 2 numbers that's both got the same prefix or the same unit rand, we are able to express it as percentages. Now here we have direct labor hours. The overhead cost is expressed in rand, but the direct labor hours and the machine hours is expressed in hours. Okay, so we cannot use a percentage here, but if we have rand here and we divide it by a number, our answer will also be in rand. So If we use, this is now what it is saying, if we use direct material cost as our overhead application basis, then our overhead rate is 199%. If we use direct labor cost, then our overhead rate is 136%. If we use direct labor hours, it is R7.02 per hour really, and machine hours R18.16 per hour. So that's the first thing we were supposed to do. Now, what do they say next? They say, prepare schedule showing the amount of overhead that would be applied to job 492 using each application rate. Assume the following data for the job. Now, this is the job data, the reality of it. So now let's go and look at the application basis again. It will be the same application basis that we just had there at the top. Here we put in the job data for job 492. So direct material on job 492 is 3,803 Rand. The direct labor cost on this job is 5,234. The direct labor hours is 1,568 hours. It's a big job. And the machine hours, that is 465. Now we multiply this data for the job with the overhead rate that we already calculated in the previous table. So here we go, and we say, okay, I'm just putting down those same overhead rates here. And then if I multiply the real data from job 492 with the overhead rate that is now being determined, I will get my overhead cost for this job. So I'm seeing my overhead cost is 7,579 as far as that overhead cost is absorbed into the direct material cost. It is 7,128 in far as the overheads is absorbed into the direct labor cost. It is 11,000, just over 11,000 if I use direct labor hours as the basis, and if I use machine hours as the basis, it is 8,445 Rand. So just see what we've done so far. Here, we started with the overhead cost that was budgeted. Okay, we picked in each case one of the four bases. We are given that information as well. If we take the total overhead and we divide it by the base number, then we get the overhead rate. Now we get a real job that we need to quote for. The job is job 492. And this is the data that apply to the job. But because we have now determined the overhead rate, we can determine the overhead cost for this job. Okay. Now that we've done that, they say to us, calculate the total cost for job 492 using the various bases. Okay. So what do we do now? We say, okay, the material cost in each of these cases is given, and it will not change. It is that direct material cost that we have there, because now we're only looking at job 497. The labor cost, well, the labor cost is also given, 5,234. That will be the same in each column. The overhead cost, this is now based on the overhead cost that we calculated there as it is absorbed into the other costs. So now we take what we have in that column and we simply put it there. And now we can calculate our total cost here, and our total cost using each one of these bases is then these numbers. So we're seeing that if we use direct labor hours as the basis for determining our overhead rate, then our total cost for job 492 will be more than in the other cases. And because we always want to be safe, we will say, okay, our total cost for this job, we estimate is going to be 20,000. We're not going to pick the lowest one because just now we're going to run into trouble. And then now we can say, okay, if my markup policy is 50%, then I will now go and I will prepare an invoice or a quote for this job, for this client, to the tune of about 30,000 Rand. Then I know that I achieved my 50% markup. And I also know that the overhead cost is not going to catch me unaware. Quite simple, this one. Let me stop sharing. Thank you. That is learning phase 2. And next time we meet, we will start looking at learning phase 3.